AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
911, what's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Walton, joined by Sergeant Walton. Clint, how are you?
I'm good.
You know, we just had Thanksgiving and Christmas is coming up, and we've had so many holidays where we've had to kind of pave our own path with how things go for us. There's even been times where I've had to make two completely separate Thanksgiving dinners, one for you and one for the actual Thanksgiving on the day for my folks and things like that. And it got me thinking about how a lot of the times we have this created stress, and it's actually called anticipatory stress. And that can happen when you're leading up towards the holiday, and all of the factors that contribute to that when your schedule just does not align with the social norm.
I think it's especially with being in a first responder family and having to adapt holidays. It's funny because the first thing that just came to mind is I know partners, especially with younger kids that are like 2 to 3 years old, like say they have to work Christmas and they'll celebrate their Christmas with their family on like the day after, the day before. And like their kids don't know what they, on what the 25th is, but they like plan of, well, we're celebrating Christmas as if Christmas Day was on the 26th or the 28th, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times when you are in a relationship with somebody that doesn't necessarily understand that or doesn't agree with that, I'm thinking of my dad. He's so stubborn and so old school. Like we could never celebrate our birthdays on any day other than our birthday, for example. It can add a lot of additional stress that's not necessary. And it's so important to make sure that you're having those candid conversations with people. There are also a lot of times where you and I have been hit pretty hard by our families who don't necessarily get the reasons why we have to do things the way that we do them, or making the decision to either go and attend an event on your own, for me, for example, or making the decision to not go and attend an event. And that could be, an example would be, let's say we're having Christmas and your schedule inflicts on my sleep schedule. Then I might want to choose to not go to that family Christmas event that I was invited to, and instead wait until you're home and then like bring the presents and bring the cookies or whatever I bake and have our own little Christmas with family, how it works best for us. And people, I mean, I know that we've been judged in being selfish in that regard countless times. And you get to a point where you just don't care. When you're saying no to other people, you're saying yes to yourself. And it's taken a lot of years to be able to be totally comfortable with that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to actually realize too, like for us, people, they point the finger at us, say, I have to work, and you decide to, we're going to celebrate this together and we want to have that togetherness on it. So we postpone it for ourselves for a day or two, but our families don't always align with that. And so they don't have, like, they call us selfish in a way, but ultimately, like, they need to have some understanding too. It goes both sides.
Yeah. And ultimately the biggest sacrifice comes from us, because we're having to kind of do double duty on everything, like trying to make it special for one another, which I think we do a great job of. And then still making sure that our family knows that they're important to us, but it has to work on a schedule that works for us when you live with somebody who's a first responder. And there's so many holiday struggles that a lot of first responders go through. Of course, you're missing the traditions, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things. I know for me, for example, like sitting around the table and having the Thanksgiving food that I cooked, that I learned how to cook from my mom, that's a tradition that I know is important to me, but also important to my family. My dad, he would say, don't ever tell anybody this, but like your food is way better than what I had to eat, or he'll just kind of vent to me about the circumstances and what he was putting in his face. And a lot of that's not necessarily like, oh man, they cook so badly. It's because he's used to those particular tastes and the way that I do things, because that's how my mom did it.
Yeah, and I think too, like especially with your dad, like he's that creature of habit, and he likes things a certain way, and in knowing that, like, you always go over and above, not only for me, but to make sure that he's happy and he's receiving that. Like Thanksgiving is the holiday he loves most. I would say secondary to his birthday, because he loves his birthday.
Yeah, and as a first responder, you're basically at the station or on the streets when your family is celebrating without you again, usually. I was talking to somebody last night, and he was talking to me about a lot of the times having to split holidays. And he's recently married, and then he's talking to me about now having to learn how to split holidays between his family and his wife now, and not just between him and work. Yeah,
I think over time you learn those different approaches, those different ways how you can split those to make it work for you as a couple. And ultimately what it comes down to is you have your career, you have your job, and you can't always get out of those shifts to where you have to be adaptable and make it okay, we're doing it the next day.
Another element to this is for the first responder, especially if you work in law enforcement, because you could have this sort of emotional whiplash. So it's the holiday. Let's use Christmas as the example. And all things are supposed to be cheery and merry. And a lot of the times out there on the streets, this is when you're faced with those domestic violence calls, a lot of those overdoses, just the crashes that spike during the holiday season that are really meant for joy, but you see the bad side of it.
Yeah, and it's one thing I was just thinking about all the different Christmases I've worked. Like the morning time is always wonderful. It's dead. There's not tons of calls, but as soon as that afternoon spike hits, it's really busy, and people don't recognize that or realize that it's going nonstop, because you start seeing a lot of tragic. Like I remember one Thanksgiving actually that we had, I want to say it was 4 homicides in that one Thanksgiving, and I was like, man, that was a busy day.
And I think too, as an officer, it could be easy for you to feel like an outsider, even in your own home during those celebrations, because everybody might be in the midst of things, and maybe you finally got off and you're on your way home, and a lot of those traditions and things have already been carried out. It could be a little bit uncomfortable to incorporate yourself and your mind back into the swing of the joyous times when you just got off of a shift like that.
Yeah, I think it bears that weight that you carry, especially after having such a long day, and you're just like, I want to just go home and chill and rest and be with my wife, be with my kids, whatever it may be. And you come home to a house full of people, and they don't necessarily recognize what you just went through.
We've done a lot of trial and error, and I think there are a lot of ways that even as a first responder or somebody who's married to one, or maybe you're a child of one, there are so many things that you can do to not only survive the holidays, but even to be able to enjoy them. And, something for me that's always been important is if you have to be at work, I try to do things that are going to allow you to be at work, but still feel the presence of being at home while you're there. So like getting gifts, for example, like it makes me happy to prepare gifts that you can give to like a team if you're on a detail, and baking things, or just giving you a meal that you can take with you. We've done that before. Something to where you're taking those traditions with you, and it's not like you're being left out even on the day.
Yeah, and it's so important. So, because even if you don't recognize it in that moment, you don't recognize it at that time, it's something that you're going to remember, and you're still going to feel a part of the celebration, everything else that's going on.
And I think that the whole let's celebrate this on a different day, like that is so important to be able to do, and have it in your mindset that like this is our celebration. Like you're not honoring, the faith-filled aspects of Christmas, if you're not celebrating it on the day, like that you can still do in your own mindset in a different way. But as far as all of the other kind of more commercialized things that we do during the holiday, I think that it's important to just have that conversation and have it with your kids and, be okay and just set it up to where if you do Thanksgiving breakfast, for example, maybe that Thanksgiving breakfast is going to start the next day at 5 p.m.
Yeah, being able to be adaptable and having because ultimately what it comes down to is sharing that space and time with your loved ones and being with them. Not just the food, not just the gifts, whatever it may be. It's sharing that space with them.
And finding ways to still incorporate the holiday in your own way. I was talking to another officer yesterday and he has to work on Thanksgiving and his kids aren't going to be home. It's a very different year because he's always been big about like cooking the Thanksgiving dinner with his wife and all of those types of things. And so this is the first time that the conversation was different. And he was telling me that he had to work and his kids weren't going to be there. And so I asked him, like, are you still cooking for Thanksgiving? And he's like, well, I asked my wife and she said, no, I might do it anyways because I already have a turkey. And I was encouraging him to like still do that, like still have those things, take a lunchbox with you and still enjoy that turkey dinner. It doesn't mean that you have to completely just omit yourself from being able to enjoy those things. It might take a little bit more effort to be able to prepare to do those things, but I think it's important.
Yeah, and especially even if you're not, say, preparing it for your family, but if you were to bring your excess and bring it to the station and enjoy it with your partners, like it's a cool aspect and dynamic you can create.
I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.